Married for 5 years. The most intimate thing between Farina and me was just one drunken kiss, which I had to beg for. Marrying me was something she did in a fit of pique towards the person she had an ambiguous relationship with. A ridiculous joke in a moment of impulse. Later, I died in a remote, snowy mountain. I once thought my death would grant her fulfillment, allowing her to be with her first love forever. But when my soul returned, I saw her kneeling and bowing with every step, climbing the long 3,000 stair street leading to the church, just to beg God for my safe return. It was then that I realized how terribly wrong I had been. I died in the 5th year after our marriage, dying in a sudden, unannounced winter snowfall. When I died, I still carried the divorce agreement that I hadn't managed to send. I always kept those flimsy papers on me. Many times I intended to send them back to the capital, returning freedom to Farina. But each time, I selfishly hid them away. A cold chill spread through my body. I couldn't move, my consciousness slowly fading. I never expected 5 years of entanglement to finally end this way. It's probably for the best, I thought, since there was never a conclusion between us anyway. Farina, let's not meet again in the next life. Perhaps God took pity, unwilling to let me die far from home. So he did not reclaim my soul. My soul passed through the snowy mountains, crossed the streams, traversed the vast grassland, returning to the capital, finding its way to Farina's side. She had just received the news of my disappearance. On her face was a stunned expression, as if she couldn't believe it. The phone screen was still lit, displaying a message from my supervisor. Missing due to avalanche, fate unknown. I drifted closer to her, looking into those clear eyes. When I was alive, I rarely got to look so closely. Those eyes were seductive, truly beautiful. But because she felt no affection for me, they were always as cold as ice and snow. Suddenly, a tear fell from her eye. I instinctively reached out my hand, but couldn't touch anything. My shadow passed through her body, hopelessly. That's right, I was already dead. There was a knock at the door. Dago walked in, embracing her, and gently said, "Farina, don't grieve anymore, you still have me in the future." Dago was Farina's first love. Now that I was dead, they could finally be together. I turned my back, unwilling to watch the person I loved being held by someone else. Grieve for what? Farina's voice trembled, mixed with indignation. He's not dead, he's just missing. Missing, do you understand? With that, she slammed the door shut, not letting Dago in no matter what he said. I saw her slump down behind the door, as if she had lost something extremely important. But she had always been indifferent to me, hadn't she? I floated beside her, hopelessly trying to comfort her. By morning, Farina finally reacted. She stood up, grabbed her car keys, and rushed straight out. The car drove straight to the suburbs. On the long street in front of the church, the woman who was once so arrogant was now just a lost, haggard soul, looking up at the centuries-old statue of Christ. Then she knelt down. Passers-by all turned to stare. She knelt, then bowed her head, taking 3 steps with every kowtow, murmuring, "Please, God, grant my husband a safe return." I rushed forward, trying to stop her, but my hand passed through her body again. Everything was useless. Under the scorching August sun, she continued to kneel, hair disheveled, forehead bleeding, without stopping. She was a noble lady, pampered since childhood, never having endured such hardship. I stretched out my hands wanting to help her up. But human and ghost walk separate paths. Though right before my eyes, we still couldn't touch. Dago approached, holding an umbrella. For the first time, I wished he would take her away. "Victor is dead," Dago yelled. "You can't ruin yourself for a dead man." "Impossible." Farina lifted her head, her face showing an unprecedented ferocity. "Absolutely impossible. Victor promised me he would return safely. He's been missing for a week now," Dago said. "Even if he's alive, he's starved to death by now. Stop lying to yourself." The words were like a clap of thunder on a clear day. She was shaken, staring blankly at him. "He's dead, he won't come back," Dago said softly, as if comforting a child. "Farina, listen to me, I'll take you home." I stood beside her, holding her bleeding hand, wanting to tell her I really am dead. But when Dago tried to pull her away, Farina snatched her hand back and said coldly, "Get lost." Then she continued walking toward the church. Reaching the last step, her legs trembled, almost using her whole body to push open the church door. A priest rushed to support her. The eyes of the priest, having experienced many years of ups and downs, were full of compassion. He spoke softly. "Birth and death, all things are impermanent. You should let go of this attachment soon." Farina's gaze gradually darkened. Her whole body seemed drained of strength. She knelt down on the cushion, bowed her head once, then collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. The church bell echoed from the distant mountain, deep and resonant. In that moment, I seemed to understand something, and rushed desperately in front of her, wanting to say, "Farina, I'm dead. You must live happily, and be peaceful for the rest of your life." My soul gradually dissolved in the light, a beam of light piercing through my body. Once, twice, 3 times. The sky was bright. In a daze, I saw Farina wearing a wedding dress, her figure slender and charming, the white silk dress glistening, like a fairy descending to the mortal world. I truly can't bear to leave, I thought, my eyes stinging. Now, the groom may kiss the bride. That kiss during the wedding ceremony that year was the biggest regret of my life. If I could do it again. I blinked. The scent of the flowers in Farina's hand spread, touching my nose. And then I realized something was wrong. I bit down hard on my tongue. It hurt a lot. It was real. I had returned to our wedding day. Oh, it seems our groom has been stunned by the bride's beauty. "Everyone, cheer for the groom," the host said, his eyes giving a clear signal. I came to my senses and turned to look at Farina. She was calm, but there was a hint of vague loss in her eyes. I didn't let her say anything more. Quickly put my hand on her waist, leaned down, and kissed those lips, completing the kiss I didn't have the courage to do in the previous life. Applause erupted. Farina's ears turned red. The wedding then proceeded as smoothly as the previous life. On our wedding night, Farina changed into comfortable pajamas, her eyes revealing a trace of tiredness. She was speaking seriously on the phone with someone. And seeing me enter, she lowered her voice, but didn't hang up. She said, "Sorry," once, then left the room and went into the study. In the previous life, our wedding night was the same. There was an accident with her company's project. A worker fell from a high floor, life or death unknown. She had to stabilize the shareholders and handle the crisis simultaneously. At the time, I foolishly thought Farina was just pretending to be busy to avoid me. She stayed in the study all night. The next day, she plunged back into work. As for me, due to a small glitch in my project, I requested leave and returned to the research institute. From then on, the relationship between us became increasingly distant. Living in the same house, but no different from 2 strangers. Now that I'm reborn, I want to make up for everything I owed her. Thinking this, I went into the kitchen, made a cup of coffee, and brought it to the study door. Farina looked up at me, her eyes slightly questioning. I said, "I made you coffee." She looked down at the cup, her voice cold. "Thank you." Then she lowered her head and typed on the keyboard. Until midnight. The light in the study slowly dimmed. I walked in, and sure enough, saw her slumped over the desk, intending to sleep there temporarily. I turned on the light and said, "Sleeping like that is bad for your spine." With that, I bent down and lifted her horizontally. A good sleep gives you the energy to keep working. Her arm unconsciously wrapped around my neck, her eyes showing a flash of confusion. Before, the most intimate thing between us was just holding hands. I gently placed her on the bed. She turned her face away, her cheeks slightly flushed. "Tonight is not allowed." I froze, then understood what she was saying. I covered her with the blanket, and naturally lay down next to her. "I'm not teasing you. Go to sleep early. Good night." Farina was silent for a long time, then whispered, "Good night," hearing the steady breathing next to me. For the first time I felt I was truly reborn. My heart was unusually calm. In the previous life, I always thought Farina didn't love me. She was noble, beautiful, had money, power, and talent. A perfect goddess. As for me, a dry, awkward person. I was only able to continue my studies thanks to Farina's family scholarship. In the eyes of the world, I was just a loyal dog by her side, a tool for her to vent her anger whenever Dago hurt her. Our marriage was simply a play she staged out of anger towards him. I once believed this marriage was merely the climax of that play. After getting married, because of the ambiguous relationship between her and Dago, I carried a bitter heart, intentionally keeping my distance, believing I was giving her space, until I died in the snowy mountain, and my soul returned, seeing her kneeling and kowtowing 3 steps at a time for me, begging God for protection. It was then I understood how wrong I had been. My mind was filled with chaotic thoughts. I vaguely drifted off to sleep. When I woke up, Farina was wearing a white dress, buttoning the buttons, revealing a segment of her slender, fair waist. She turned her head. I felt a bit embarrassed, as if caught peeking. "You're up so early, going to work?" "Yes," she replied softly. "I might be late tonight. You go to sleep first." No sooner had the words left her mouth, the phone rang repeatedly. I glanced. The name on the screen was Dago. Farina subconsciously looked at me once. The second day after the wedding, she received a call from her ex-lover. No matter who it was hard not to overthink it. If this were before, I would definitely blame myself, thinking Farina still longed for Dago. But I am someone who has lived a life again. So I simply woke up calmly and went about my business. Farina hesitated for a moment before answering the phone. Dago's voice was just waking up, gentle as a spring breeze. "Do you want to sleep a little longer?" Farina's voice was cold, devoid of emotion. "Why are you looking for me?" "About the construction site incident. I've already had someone help you resolve it. You'll have a week of vacation soon. Do you want to go out and relax with me? Or perhaps go to the suburban villa for a break?" Although Farina's voice had grown cold, Dago's voice was still gentle and warm as before. He was always like that. On one hand, rejecting Farina's interest. On the other, intentionally using gentleness to make her waver. Relying on the close relationship between the two families, Dago skillfully gained the advantage, playing Farina in the palm of his hand, making her pursue him for over 10 years. But he also unintentionally reminded me, we currently have a week of honeymoon leave. In the previous life, I thought Farina had no feelings for me, so I unilaterally cancelled the vacation. She was busy working overtime, and so a honeymoon that should have been sweet was turned by both of us into a dry, boring work session. In this life, I don't intend to repeat that mistake. So I snatched her phone and said decisively, "Dago, for the upcoming vacation, my wife and I already have our own plans. You don't need to concern yourself anymore." After saying that, I gave him no chance to speak, and immediately hung up. I handed the phone back to Farina. Her peach blossom eyes stared at me, her gaze full of surprise and disbelief. After all, in the previous life, I was obedient and compliant towards her, never daring to do something like snatching her phone. When I realized I might have been too much, I instinctively whispered, "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "What?" Farina interrupted. I was stunned. "What is what?" "The vacation. Did you say you already had plans?" Farina smiled gently. She was already beautiful. And when she smiled, it was like spring snow melting, heartbreakingly soft. No wonder Dago was once so infatuated with her. She truly was a vibrant red rose, proud and captivating. By the time the car reached the hotel, it was already twilight. After dinner, Farina suggested taking a stroll along the riverbank. The evening breeze carried a slight warmth, and the sunset cast a golden glow on the water. Just as I held her hand, we unexpectedly ran into a few people at the bend, led by Dago. What bad luck! He saw us too, and approached with a smile. Behind him, several wealthy young men from the same circles. All looked at me with mocking eyes, as if watching a show. "Didn't expect to run into you here, Farina," Dago said. Maybe it was an illusion, but I felt Farina subtly tighten her grip on my hand. "I didn't expect to run into you here either," she replied. Farina paused for a moment. Dago stiffened slightly. His eyes behind the gold-rimmed glasses narrowed a bit, showing displeasure. But he still managed to keep his voice calm. "Everyone's here, why don't we all take a walk together?" No need. Farina looped her arm through mine. My husband and I are on our honeymoon. Please enjoy yourselves. With that, she pulled me straight away. Walking around them. As we passed Dago. His gaze swept over me, filled with hostility. I just raised an eyebrow, holding Farina's hand as we left. After walking quite a distance, she still hadn't let go of my hand. I asked, "Why aren't you saying anything?" Farina stopped, looking up at me. "Why aren't you asking me about Dago? Why should I ask about him?" I mimicked her, gently squeezing her hand. A trace of worry flashed in Farina's eyes. "Are you not bothered by me and him?" I lowered my head and lightly kissed my wife's lips. "Don't talk about it anymore." To say I was not bothered would be a lie. But who doesn't have a first love? It's just that I arrived late. You once liked him. But that's in the past. I chose to marry you. And I definitely won't leave you again. I wrapped my arms around her waist and kissed her deeply. As our lips touched, her face instantly flushed red, like a rose blooming in the afternoon sun. In the middle of the crowd, I chuckled softly. "I know you're shy." I truly hadn't realized before. It turned out her skin was this sensitive. I had the urge to tease her, and lightly placed another kiss on her lips. She immediately pushed me away, her face crimson. You're shameless." After saying that, she walked a few steps ahead, then turned back to grab my hand, pulling me along. The honeymoon was over. Farina returned to her busy work, and I returned to the research institute as usual. I even brought wedding candy to share with my colleagues. During lunch break, I handed them out individually. Everyone accepted the candy, laughing and remarking, "You're really something. You actually married that famous female CEO." It just goes to show, a devoted Liam chose, simper, eventually succeeds. "Victor, you're the best." I just smiled without saying anything. The atmosphere suddenly quieted down. I turned my head in the direction of everyone's gaze. It was Bella. She extended her hand towards me. "Victor, where's my wedding candy?" I smiled, placing the candy in her hand. "Of course, you get a share." The people around immediately looked at each other, then left one by one, leaving a space for just the two of us. Bella forced a smile. "I didn't think Victor would really end up with Farina. Living with someone who doesn't love you. Do you truly not feel uncomfortable?" I calmly replied, "That is my wife. I don't feel uncomfortable. And that matter has nothing to do with you." Bella and I met in college. And later, we both went to work at the same research institute. Bella's feelings for me were obvious even to the clumsy men in the lab. So how could I not know? It's just that affection cannot be forced. Bella's eyes were red-rimmed, the glistening moisture about to overflow. I didn't think my words were too cruel. Because treating someone who loves you ambiguously is the cruelest thing. I handed Bella the bag of wedding candy. "Here is yours, I'm leaving now. You can enjoy it slowly." With that, I didn't give her a chance to burst into tears. Turning around and walking away. Behind me, Bella called out, choked with emotion, "She's not worth it. Farina is so cold and heartless. Is she worth your trouble?" I stopped, turned to look. My voice suddenly cold. Farina is not cold. Nor is she heartless. She is my wife. Our relationship as husband and wife is very good. A few seconds later, sobbing indeed rang out behind me. I didn't look back, just walked away silently, texting Farina to let her know I was on my way back to the institute. I went into the lab, preparing to pull an all-nighter. Research work involves a lot of talk and little pay. It's fortunate that Farina is a rich lady. Otherwise, I really wouldn't dare to stick around here. I finished work well past midnight. As I was changing out of my lab coat, I heard the voices of several colleagues outside the door. I heard she's the great Miss Farina. That famous beautiful female CEO. I can't believe that Bumpkin got his hands on her. He looked really cheerful today. Being a live-in son-in-law is quite a skill, I guess. Farina's family even invested a large sum in our institute. From now on, we'll probably have to suck up to that pretty boy. Right after that was another voice, Lopez, who started at the institute the same time as me. What great miss. She's just Dago's leftovers. She was already following Dago to nightclubs right after turning legal age. She acts all high and mighty on the outside. But in reality, She was played out long ago. Victor is just a fool picking up scraps. The two men sneered, their voices vulgar. Even damaged goods found someone to take her. I hung up my coat, stepped outside, and ran right into them. The expressions on both their faces changed. Especially Lopez, his smile froze on his face. He coughed. I was just kidding. Besides, what I said wasn't wrong. She really is the one Dago played out. I clenched my fist and punched him straight in the face. Did you grow that mouth just to say that kind of trash? One punch, two punches. I unleashed the moves I learned when I was still struggling in the slums. Wherever I hit, the flesh thumped. The people around struggled to pull me away. Later, someone said, I looked like I had gone mad at that moment. When Farina came to the police station to bail me out, Lopez was still next to me, his face swollen like a pig's head. My wife walked over, her high heels clicking on the floor, her office dress hugging her curves, her long, wavy hair swaying in the light, as if a goddess had descended to the mortal world. I thought so to myself. And then the goddess was standing right in front of me. She frowned, reaching out and pinching my cheek hard. Lopez next to me tried to suppress his pain, yet still yelled, Your husband beat people up like a mad dog. I'm telling both of you, I won't let this go. The guy still had enough strength to talk. I was about to speak, but was cut off by Farina's dagger-like gaze. The fight was eventually settled smoothly. Thanks to her authority, of course. On the way home, Farina didn't say a word. I knew I was wrong, and tried to cheer her up. As soon as we got home, I grabbed her hand. Farina, I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. Don't be angry, I'll cook something delicious for you later. She glared at me, and firmly tapped my forehead. Well done, Victor. I didn't realize you were so good at fighting. If no one had intervened, you probably would have killed the man. I gave a sheepish laugh. I have control. I know what I'm doing. No killing involved. I swear to God. Farina took a few deep breaths, still angry. Aren't you afraid something would happen to you? Seeing her calm down, I gently held her hand. Don't you know my temper? It's not like I've never fought before. Thinking back on the old days, I was even a little proud. Don't worry, your husband isn't that stupid. She glanced at me, didn't reply, and stood up to go into the room. It's over, I'm done for, I sighed, looking at the sofa beneath me. Guessing I'd have to sleep here tonight. I had just picked up a pillow to fluff it, when Farina came back out, looking cold, slamming the door shut with a bang. She placed a first aid kit on the coffee table. Give me your hand. I obediently offered my hand. She took it, applying iodine with a cotton ball. It was only then that I realized my knuckles were scraped, with fresh red blood seeping out. Farina lowered her head, focusing intently on applying the medicine. A few soft strands of hair fell, brushing against my wrist, making my heart feel itchy. After bandaging it up, she suddenly pinched the injured spot hard. I let out a small yelp. HMPHED. Does it hurt? Do you dare to fight again? I quickly shook my head. No, I don't dare. I was lying. If there was a next time, I would hit even harder. She glared. Victor, you agreed to marry me yourself. If you dare to leave me a widow, I won't forgive you even in death. I looked at her, suddenly overcome with an urge to hold her tightly. And after a few seconds of silence, I lifted Farina up in my arms. She gasped in panic, her hands flailing against my back. But it didn't hurt at all. I'm not over being angry yet, you bastard. I nodded and smiled. Yes, I'm your bastard, yours. That night, I finally understood what it meant to bring suffering upon oneself. In the previous life, I was too obstinate, and Farina was too cold. I misunderstood that she had lost her affection for me, while she doubted that I had stopped loving her. The result was the tragedy of separation by life and death. But actually, Farina was not as aloof and cold as I thought. After the time I fought Lopez, and after she had her outburst, I realized Farina was no different from a ragdoll cat. As long as you stroke her the right way, even if she's angry inside, she's still surprisingly gentle. After the brawl, the institute suspended me for half a month. With nothing to do in my free time, I switched careers to become a full-time house husband, driving my wife to work in the morning, picking her up in the afternoon, cooking and cleaning. That peaceful life made me almost forget about the fight. But Farina had someone investigate everything to the root. Of course, those malicious insults also reached her ears. When I found her, she was sitting on the balcony, cuddling a glass of wine, quietly borrowing the spirits to drown her sorrow. "You may have been intimate with me," she said, "but I never thought of you as a replacement. Over the years, I've actually owed you too much. That's why they dared to insult you so brazenly." She was wrapped in a beige shawl, her eyes red, her voice low and sad. I sat down next to her and spoke softly. "You don't owe me anything. Everything was voluntary on my part. Those were my true feelings." Farina was different from Dago. She was never ambiguous or indecisive with people she didn't like. When she rejected someone, she was decisive. As for me, I used the excuse of repaying gratitude to stay by her side all those years. I met Farina when I was 16. At that time, my parents had been divorced for 3 years. I was a stray child no one wanted. Had dropped out of school halfway. Spent all day wandering the slums. Smoking, fighting, drinking. Living a murky life. With no future in sight. Hearing that my teacher, the one who used to secretly sneak me bread, was sick, I brought a bag of apples I bought for $3 a pound, intending to climb over the wall to visit her. And under the spring wind, amid the falling pear blossoms, I saw Farina. She stood beneath the wall, surrounded by light, like a scene from a dream. The apples in my hand rolled and scattered at her feet. And she was the one who fully witnessed my most struggling youth. At that time, Farina was only 17, accompanying the adults in her family to inspect the factory in my town. Before leaving, that adult suddenly wanted to sponsor the tuition for a poor, studious student, and she followed along to observe. She didn't say anything, still as cold as my later impression. But she bent down to pick up all the apples for me and placed them in my lap. After that day, I returned to my old, dark life. Until my teacher called, saying someone had paid for all my tuition and living expenses, telling me to return to school. The money came from that rich man's scholarship fund. I knew Farina had yielded that spot for me. In the previous life, before moving to the capital, I once returned to the town, and the retired teacher at the time said that scholarship had already been fully allocated. The person who was added later was because that girl requested it. In the eyes of outsiders, even in Farina's eyes, it was always me being tolerant, taking care of, and sacrificing for her. But only I knew, the one who saved my life was Farina. When she poured the third glass of wine, I quickly snatched the glass from her hand. She immediately lunged to get it back. I held my hand high. The height advantage worked for the first time. Unable to retrieve it, Farina got angry, hugging the pillow and turning her back, refusing to look at me anymore. I sighed. "Drinking is harmful to your health, wife." She didn't say anything. I changed my tone, much gentler, like coaxing a child. "No more drinking this, it's spicy and bitter. How about I make you some honey pear water later?" Farina was silent for a moment, then whispered, "It has to have honey." "Okay, lots and lots of honey." I bent down, picking up her whole body along with the blanket. With the experience from the previous life, I no longer cared about those hurtful words. The institute was so busy. A few rumors would eventually be swept away by time. But Farina didn't think that way. She pressured the management, causing Lopez to be investigated. And he left the research institute just a month after my suspension. In the previous life, Lopez was fired for almost leaking confidential documents. That matter was probably unrelated to her. But I knew. This time, Farina's hand was definitely involved. From then on, no one dared to spread rumors about me and her anymore. Towards the end of the year, Farina brought me to the corporation's year-end party. She wore a black velvet dress, highlighting her captivating and graceful figure. Holding my hand, introducing me to every major figure in the business world. And of course, in a place like that, it was inevitable to run into Dago again. Next to him was the daughter of an influential figure. News of their engagement had just been released. A marriage between politics and commerce. The benefits go without saying. in the middle of the crowd. His gaze lingered on Farina. I don't know what he was thinking. I was slightly surprised by the engagement news. Because in the previous life, at this point, he was still passionately pursuing Farina. The engagement only happened much later. But thinking about it, it also made sense. Perhaps he realized Farina had truly stopped loving him. In the second half of the party, the main hall turned into a place of subtle deal-making, with business people gathering to discuss New Year collaborations. I quietly retreated to the balcony to catch my breath. You and Farina look quite harmonious. Farina's father walked in without me noticing. Although over 50, he still exuded a solemn and sharp demeanor. I nodded, and quietly replied, "We've known each other for many years. After all." Jose, her father, sighed. "This child has a strong personality. Her mother passed away early, and the affection within the family has always been cold. She wasn't happy at home, which made it easy for that fellow Dago to wedge his way in. Ultimately, it's my fault. As a father, I owe her too much." I looked down at the wineglass in my hand, remaining silent. Indeed, Farina and her family didn't share much affection. For many years, even during Christmas, she would just stay out, not returning home. After her mother passed, her father was busy with work, and Dago was the one who was with her the longest. Jose continued, "You shouldn't blame the child for being so devoted to Dago before." I quietly replied, "I will treat Farina well." He glanced at me, squinting. "If you dare to treat her badly, I won't stand for it." I looked up at him, once again choosing to remain silent. Farina is my wife. Since she chose me, I will not let her down. I hope so. Jose took a drag from his cigarette, exhaling a puff of white smoke. "You should go inside. She has to socialize. Even if you don't understand the business, you should listen so you can help a little." I obeyed, having no choice but to return to the ballroom. Farina quietly asked, "Did my father give you a hard time?" I shook my head. "No." But her expression was clearly uneasy. It makes sense. Jose still thought our marriage was a joke. At that time, Farina and I got married very hastily. It was only 1 week from the registration day to the ceremony. Back then, everyone, including me, believed she only married me to spite Dago. Even Jose believed so. After all, who lets a son-in-law and father-in-law meet for the first time at the wedding ceremony? In the previous life, when Farina said she wanted a divorce, Jose himself was the one who came to advise me to keep her. He said, "Dago is not a good person. A father can't watch his daughter rush into a fire pit." I gave a wry smile, hugging Farina's waist as I recounted. He also said that if I dared to bully you, he would chop me into 8 pieces. Farina froze, then let out a small laugh. Did my father really say that? After the party, we got into the car to go home. Farina was slightly drunk, leaning on my shoulder, quiet as a small cat dozing off. As soon as we arrived home, there was another uninvited guest at the door. Farina looked out, pressed her lips together, wondering what she was thinking. Dago was leaning against the wall, his head slightly bowed, and under the curtain of the night rain. He truly looked like a pathetic lovesick man. I gave a faint smile. "What, not going to cut the knife down?" Farina and I got out of the car. Seeing this, Dago rushed over. When he saw my jacket draped over Farina's shoulders, his eyes suddenly grew dimmer. "I really couldn't stand that green tea act," I said coldly. "Dago, shouldn't you be with your fiancé tonight? Why are you at my house?" He looked at Farina, his voice trembling. "Farina, can we talk? I've already discussed the matter of next year's cooperation with your sister. I know there are still many business ties between our two sides." "I'm not talking about that, Farina." I tightened the jacket around Farina's shoulders and said coldly, "What are you looking at? Haven't you ever seen a couple show affection?" Seeing that Farina showed no intention of listening to him, Dago could only give a forced smile and nod. "Fine, we'll talk another time." He looked at her, his eyes full of regret. "Farina, goodbye." Looking at his lonely figure in the rain, I found it only ridiculous. Before marrying me, he was always the chosen one in Farina's heart. But he was the one who pushed her away, only acting sorrowful after losing her, as if he were the one being forced. Farina spoke softly. "Dago." He spun around, his eyes blazing with hope. She spoke slowly, decisively. You and I are over. His face froze. Actually, there's nothing much to talk about between us. Before, it was only one-sided on my part. Now, my heart is no longer with you. From now on, we each go our own way. She held my hand. Victor, please don't let him bother me again. Dago stood motionless, as if his entire being had just collapsed. I supported her waist, guiding her into the house. The rain was getting heavier. That lonely figure still stood motionless outside the porch, not leaving. I pulled the curtains shut, and Farina didn't care at all. She wrapped herself in a blanket, smiling as she told me, "Today's pear soup is very sweet." Since that night, Dago truly disappeared from our lives. The next time we met was at his wedding to Mavuika. Initially, Farina wasn't planning to go. But Jose was traveling with his wife. So she had to attend on behalf of the family, with me. I always thought that an excellent ex should disappear like justice itself. Not occasionally rise from the grave, like this. Acting as if he was the one who was hurt. In the fitting room, Farina changed her dress and asked, "Is this outfit beautiful, husband?" I chuckled softly, pulling back the curtain, and affectionately held her hand. "Very beautiful, my wife looks good in anything." During the wedding, when Dago saw Farina, he was still able to calmly raise his glass in a toast. From then on, he completely vanished from our world. A few years later, news of the discovery of a new species on the snowy mountain spread everywhere. I again entertained the idea of going there for a trip. In the previous life, I had gone there, partly to distance myself from Farina. But actually, the real reason was that mutated snow lotus species. When Farina found out, she was furious, but then slowly came to understand my reasons. 2 days before I departed, she took me to the church outside the city. In the previous life, she came here to pray for my safety. In this life, it was the same, still for me. A deep emotion suddenly surged within me. We knelt together before the solemn statue of Christ. She placed a cross around my neck, telling me to remember to keep it with me. When I arrived on the plateau, the thin air made me suffer for the first few weeks. It took me nearly 2 months to adapt. Farina video called almost every day, insisting I apply all sorts of lotions and rose water that she sent. I happily complied, and my teammates in the survey team even teased that I was strictly managed by my wife. But the closer it got to the date of the avalanche from the past, the more uneasy I felt. And when Lopez was transferred into the survey team, that sense of instability became even clearer. I once thought that because the relationship between Farina and me was different, everything in this life would change. But thinking back now, from the way people viewed our marriage, to Dago marrying Mavuika, and then Lopez joining the survey team, everything was still, step by step, repeating exactly as in the previous life. Everything, for different reasons, ultimately led to the same outcome as the previous life. So does that mean my fate will also repeat itself? I dared not think further. Work and life continued along their familiar trajectory. Lopez, just like in the previous life, looked at me with eyes full of resentment every time, exuding a kind of decadent and frantic aura. And I couldn't really blame him. After all, his being forced out of the research institute by Farina was because of the fight with me. I decided to go on the mountain climb earlier than planned. In the previous life, this climb was to collect samples of the blue snow lotus and record its survival conditions. That job was enough for me alone. On the 3rd day after the snow stopped falling, I reported back to the team and started ascending the mountain alone. Because I had been trained and had memories from the previous life, the route I chose this time was not difficult, even somewhat easier. But I dared not be careless, constantly observing my surroundings. Then I saw Lopez. He was secretly following behind, not far from me. Suddenly, he slipped. Although I hated him, I wasn't so heartless as to leave a person alone in such a desolate snowy mountain. I walked over, extending my hand. "Can you still walk?" "No, I can't walk anymore." He looked up, his eyes revealing something strange, an excitement and madness. I followed his gaze and looked over. It was a black backpack. From inside, a wire was exposed, sputtering tiny sparks. I immediately realized. A cold chill ran down my spine. "You bastard Lopez, are you crazy?" I yelled, grabbing a handful of snow and throwing it at him. Lopez, like a mad dog, lunged straight at me. We wrestled. He was smaller, no match for me. But he clung tightly to my waist, refusing to let go no matter how hard I punched. Boom! The sound of an explosion rang out. It was the backpack detonating. Immediately after, everything was engulfed in a crashing sound like the sky falling. Snow pouring down like a white cascade. I used my last ounce of strength, shoving him away, and lunging towards a large rock nearby. Before being buried by snow and debris, my eyes only managed to see a white blur of blood and snow. I struggled to move, calling for help. I don't know how long it had been, but someone finally came and dug me out. The sunlight was too bright, making my eyes ache. Only later did I learn. My left eye had been badly bruised by Lopez's punch, which was why it hurt so much. I was taken to the hospital. That night, Farina immediately took a train to visit. When she arrived, my anesthetic was just wearing off. My whole body still in a blurry state, half awake, half asleep. The events of the previous life and this life flashed through my mind like a fast-forwarded film reel. For a moment, I even thought everything after the rebirth was just a beautiful dream. Before freezing to death on the snowy mountain, the sound of water dripping from melting snow rang clearly in my ears. I opened my eyes. What hadn't melted were Farina's tears. Under the bright plateau sunlight, the glistening tears rolled down her face, like a hazy frame in a movie. I tried to raise my hand, wiping away the tears on my wife's cheek. Farina, what day is it today? You heartless man? Aren't you going to ask how worried I was about you? Her voice choked up, and the tears fell even more. Finally, she threw herself onto my chest, sobbing uncontrollably. I tilted my head, my gaze inadvertently resting on the calendar next to the bed. October 16th. It was exactly the day after the date of my death in the previous life. I gently stroked her back and said softly, "It's okay, Farina. It's all over now." My wounds hadn't fully healed, but I still returned to the capital with her. Partly because I didn't want her to worry, and partly because this was her first time in this cold place. She was suffering badly from altitude sickness, and I couldn't bear to leave her there any longer. Lopez died on the snowy mountain. The police found traces of explosive manufacturing in his room. When the investigation results were released, Farina blamed herself for having chased him out of the research institute. I just gently shook my head. That has nothing to do with you. A bad person, wanting to do evil, will naturally find 1,000 reasons to do so. You're right. She smiled softly, her finger touching the cross around my neck. Then, let's go repay our vow. Though we shouldn't be superstitious. A promise made must be fulfilled, that's the rule. I took her hand, smiling. Okay, whatever you say. Extra story. Farina, loving Victor. Loving Victor, for me, was like an inevitability. He is upright, resilient, intelligent, and most importantly, he always forgives me unconditionally. Always stands by me, regardless of right or wrong. Many years after we got married, when I brought up our first meeting with him, Victor said, his memory of me began by the pear tree in the schoolyard. But my memory of Victor started much earlier. My parents married for the benefit of the family. There was little affection between them. When I was 7, my mother died of illness. And soon after, my father remarried his old flame from his youth. Then they had 2 more sons. I from then on became the excess person in my own home. Like a transparent person, forever left out. I once thought that if I could just get their attention, I would no longer be invisible. Therefore, I chose to enter gifted student competitions. But it turned out I had no special talent. No matter how hard I tried, my achievements were only just enough to earn a dismissive nod. By high school, I was exhausted, and finally gave up the competition, switching to preparing for university entrance exams. During those years, Victor was the name that haunted our entire cohort. Because no matter how much the rankings change, he always held the top position. The first time I met him was in a small alley in a town. That day, I followed my uncle to inspect the family's factory. After it finished, the adults were busy drinking and socializing. And I, not liking those noisy places, Went for a walk alone. The small alleys were winding and tangled. I got lost without knowing when. Until the moon was high and I still hadn't found the way out. I didn't know why I wandered into that small path. Until the moon was high and I still couldn't get back to the main road. Just then, 5 or 6 boys with arms slung over each other's shoulders appeared in front of me. Someone whistled to tease me, but was immediately kicked by a tall, thin boy next to him. His voice was husky, and he said coldly, "What are you whistling for? Don't you know how to keep your mouth shut?" Saying that, he pulled his friends who were blocking the middle of the road aside, ceding half the path to me. As I walked past, I heard a click sound. It was the sound of him flicking the lighter in his hand. The flame illuminated Victor's face. His features resolute, detached. A mature handsomeness that made the friends next to him look even more childish. He pointed forward nonchalantly. "Just walk straight, it will lead you to the main road." I quickly said thank you, not wanting to get entangled with them. Walking to the end of the road, someone called after him, "Victor." That time was the first time I met him. Later, when I told him about it, Victor just smiled softly, his eyes a little distant. "So, we met so early." Later, I included his name in the tuition sponsorship list. He did not disappoint, passing the entrance exam to the botany department at Harvard University. The day before the opening ceremony, I was tricked by Dago's friend into going to a bar, claiming Dago was too drunk and no one was there to pick him up. The result was a trap. The person who pulled me out of there was Victor. From that day on, in everyone's eyes, he became the lovesick fool, spending all his time outside of class around me. Victor followed me persistently, and I refused him more than once. However, since he appeared, my gaze no longer searched for Dago. They say, love is like death, unpredictable and unavoidable. And only after meeting Victor did I truly understand that saying. To accept that I loved him. It took me exactly 5 years. 4 years of university, and 1 more year after joining the corporation. When I realized my heart's desire, I proactively proposed marriage. He looked at me, his eyes calm. The enthusiasm within me did not create even the slightest ripple in his gaze. It was then I realized 5 years was enough for me to clearly see my heart, but also enough for his love to dissipate. 5 years truly was too long. I was afraid of losing Victor, so the wedding was prepared very hastily. I comforted myself that feelings could be nurtured again, that we would have many more 5 years. Victor proved through his actions that his love for me had never changed. I was overjoyed. Thank goodness I was still in time. Thank goodness he was still willing to wait for me all those years. After the trip to the snowy mountain, I went with him to the church to give thanks to God. When he went to pray for peace, a silver-bearded priest was preaching to the couple next to us. The destiny of this life is all gained through bitter prayers in the previous life. One must know how to cherish it, and know how to preserve it. I knelt before the statue of Christ, secretly praying in my heart. If the destiny between Victor and me is truly gained through my bitter prayers in the previous life, then please, God, allow me to be a little more greedy. Let him and me meet again in the next life, and the life after that, too.